up, everybody? Charlie B back in the building. Welcome to Zarville, everybody. Welcome. Good morning. I know y'all still sleep. This is how I do, baby. Now, today's show, I put it in the vault, but I'm not even gonna do the whole vault thing because I put it in the vault yesterday, so I'm not really. It's not old, right? But Charlie B do his research. And Tim, I just want to ask you a question. Everybody is always focused on the leader of what goes on in a situation allegedly like you're in, right? Cultish status. Everybody focus on the leader, right? Let's focus on what happens to the children after all this. After all this cultish stuff you pulling. Keeping the boys on the land and all this stuff and just, they right here. Everybody's right here. If you can't rock with, I'll kick you away. I don't care who you are. Where Grandma Lily, right? Okay, so what we gonna get into is Jim Jones today. Like that. And what happened to his children. All his children after all this, right? After keeping them secluded, after holding them down and stuff like that, right? It's not good. So I'm gonna pop in after every one of his children. We're gonna talk. Let's go. Let's proceed. And for reference, won't be too many jokes in here. Won't be no jokes because a lot of people lost their lives. And I'm gonna warn y'all, there's gonna be some stuff in here that you're gonna see that it's explicit because they show Jonestown. They show a lot of pictures and photos and stuff. And if you're not ready for that, you know Charlie be a real one. Click off now. But if you know saying think you can take it, or if you just want to fast forward, when it gets to a part, you be like, nope. If you want to fast forward, I understand. You feel me? But we about to roll with this. This is what happened to Jim Jones' children. All of them. All his children. The adopted ones. Who say they want to adopt now? Right? Even the adopted children. Don't let IAG Farms have no adopted babies out there on that farm. Please. Please, because all you're going to do is put them to work. Let's go, man. And like I said, no jokey jokes on this one, y'all. I love y'all. I warned y'all. Let's go.
Jones is infamous as the cult leader behind the Jonestown Massacre, one of history's worst tragedies. But beyond the horror of that day, there's a more personal story. The fate of his 8 children. Jim and his wife Marceline built a family with children from different racial backgrounds. A symbolic rainbow family, mixing biological and adopted kids under one roof. What happened to these sons and daughters when their father's cult spiraled out of control?
Okay, now, Peanut Game, I'm not going to put this on y'all yet, but I'm going to take this one. Allegedly, we all see you spiraling, Tim, right? You're not talking about nothing really, and you hate on people. As a pastor, you're spiraling out of control. It's steps to this thing. It's steps. And like we all realize and we all say, if you two go down tomorrow, you're going to lose your mind. That's all I have to say about that whole show, allegedly. Now, I'm going to play this. And like I said, I'm going to jump in. But it's going to get back. With everything that's blended together, when y'all see this, y'all going to be like, what? We good. I ain't waking nobody up. Let's go. Let's proceed.
Uncover the untold stories of each child. Tales of devotion, defiance, survival, and heartbreak. One daughter walked away years before the tragedy and warned others. One son was literally saved by a basketball game. Another child became the center of a bitter custody battle. And sadly, many of Jim's children perished alongside him in Jonestown. Let's dive into the lives of the Jones children and see where they ended up.
Now, y'all, before we get into the children, let's just say we both, Peanut Game and Charlie B, have agreed that if them boys don't listen to Tim, he won't have, what's he gonna do? He gonna give money and let them go? No. Allegedly, he's going to do the same thing that Jim Jones did if you don't listen to your daddy, Tim, Titus, Noah, and Benjamin. Y'all all going to get cut off. We've been saying this. We've been saying stuff like this, right? So let's get into the children. And by the end of this, I don't know what anybody's going to think, but I was kind of appalled. Like, why does this seem... Y'all tell me what it seems like.
Number 8, Agnes Pauline Jones. Agnes was Jim and Marceline Jones's first adopted child, taken in back in 1954 when she was around 10 or 11 years old. She came from a troubled background, some say she had Native American roots, and became the big sister of the Jones household. Agnes grew up during the early days of People's Temple, and even worked as a nurse and caregiver within the church as a young woman. People remember her as kind and free-spirited, but also someone who struggled with the strange, high-pressure world her father created. As an adult, Agnes had moments of doubt and rebellion. She left the People's Temple several times, only to return again, torn between love for her family and fear of her father's wrath. Agnes eventually married a fellow Temple member, becoming Agnes Bishop, and had 4 children of her own. Yet she remained connected to the Temple, even as she sometimes questioned it. Being Jim Jones's daughter wasn't easy. She had to share her dad with an entire cult of followers, and that took an emotional toll. Tragically, Agnes's journey ended in Jonestown. Despite her earlier doubts, she followed her parents to the Temple's agricultural commune in Guyana in the late 1970s. On November 18, 1978, when Jim Jones ordered his followers to die, Agnes, at 35, was among the victims. She died after ingesting cyanide poison mixed into a sweet drink, along with over 900 others. Even more heartbreaking, Agnes's entire immediate family perished with her. Her husband and all 4 of her young children died that day as well. 3 generations of Agnes's family were wiped out in an instant. It's a haunting fate for the little girl who was adopted to prove that all are equal. In Jim Jones's final will, he had even disinherited Agnes, perhaps due to her wavering loyalty. Yet, in the end, she was there in Jonestown, paying the ultimate price for her father's delusion.
Okay, with that one, do you see the alleged control? Do you see she had to keep going back? Why? Why? Allegedly, if you round it all up, we've already came here and said the boys' education out the window, allegedly. Not because anything's wrong with the boys, it's because their teachings, right? It's their parents, right? So, we've already said, come here. Are you trying to teach these boys where they have to be like her? And they have to keep coming back to you because they have nothing else. Allegedly, I'm not going to put that on y'all, but I'm going to take that one. Whole show alleged. Let's go.
Number 7, Suzanne O. Jones. Suzanne was another of the Joneses' adopted children, a Korean-American girl brought into the family in 1959 when she was 6 years old. Growing up, Suzanne was part of Jim's grand experiment in equality. She called him Dad and lived among the diverse Jones household. But as she got older, Suzanne began to see the cracks in her father's facade. Unlike some of her siblings, she chose a very different path. She left the People's Temple years before the Jonestown tragedy. In the early 1970s, Suzanne married a Temple member named Mike Cardinal. Together, they became increasingly uncomfortable with Jim Jones's control and the cult's direction. By 1973, Suzanne did something brave. She and her husband defected from the Temple. They packed up and walked away, determined to build a normal life. After leaving, Suzanne became an outspoken critic of the Temple's abuses and manipulation. Of course, this did not sit well with Jim. He was furious at what he saw as her betrayal, and in Jonestown, he essentially wrote her off as an enemy. But Suzanne's decision to leave ultimately saved her life. On that fateful day in 1978, while her father and hundreds of followers met their end in Guyana, Suzanne was safe in California, far removed from the madness. Her parents had even disowned her in their wills.
Now, didn't Charlie B come here and say, if them boys don't do exactly what Tim wants them to do you really think he's going to give them money and let them leave? Who made that statement? Right? Who came back and was like, nah, Charlie B, he ain't going to get in nothing to go because he don't want them to leave, right? His child before and this lady disowned in the will. You get nothing. Think about that one. Bim, bim, bim. Tim Jr., Titus, Noah, and little Benjamin. Think about that. All the stuff your daddy building up allegedly, if you don't do what he say, poof, be gone. Whole show later.
Disowned her in their wills. In the years after, Suzanne had to live with the knowledge of what happened to her family. Her mother, Marceline, father, Jim, and several siblings were gone. It was a heavy burden, but she continued her life outside the cult's shadow. She and Mike had 2 children, and she kept a relatively low profile, focusing on family and privacy. Sadly, Suzanne's story quietly ended in 2006 when she died of colon cancer at the age of 54. She had lived nearly 3 decades beyond Jonestown, forging her own path. Suzanne's life shows that escaping a cult can be incredibly hard. It meant losing her family, but it also shows that survival and a fresh start are possible.
All I have to say is we all know stress will take you out of here, right? All of his children pass away early. Or they're all still mentally screwed up. Right? So if we can really acknowledge that, how good is it to keep your family under your thumb and control? It is what it is.
Number 6, Stephan Jones. Was born in 1959 and named after Mahatma Gandhi as a symbol of peace. He grew up literally surrounded by the People's Temple movement. Imagine being a kid and seeing your dad revered by crowds as a prophet and healer. For Stephan, that was normal life. In the early years, he experienced the best of what the temple aspired to. A community of all races living together, helping the poor, fighting for civil rights. But as Stephan became a teenager, he also saw his father's dark side, the growing ego, the strict rules, and the feeling that he had to share his dad with thousands of others.
Now putting this on you, your peanut gang. I'm taking this one. Oh, I'm about... Did you hear what that man just said about having to share his dad with thousands of others? Try hundreds of thousands, right? But I'm going to put it to where y'all can be like, what? Okay, there was no YouTube back then, right? There was no YouTube. Tim, you're doing the same exact thing with YouTube. But I'm going to even admit this, allegedly. Since there was no YouTube back then, Jim Jones didn't put his kids on script to make it work. Bin. Think about that one.
Jim was often so busy being father to the whole church that he had little time to be a normal father to Stephan. Despite some teenage rebellion and skepticism about his dad, Stephan remained involved in the temple and eventually moved to Jonestown in 1977. In Guyana, he tried to carve out a bit of normal teen life by focusing on sports. In fact, Stephan was a key player on the Jonestown basketball team. That ordinary hobby turned out to be life-saving. On November 18, 1978, 19-year-old Stephan and several other young men, including his brother Tim, were away in Georgetown, the capital of Guyana, playing in a basketball tournament. They had no idea that back at Jonestown, their father was orchestrating a nightmare. When news came that a group of temple defectors and a U.S. congressman had been attacked at a nearby airstrip, Stephan and his team sensed something was very wrong. They even tried to charter a plane to rush back to Jonestown, hoping to stop whatever was about to happen. But it was too late. Authorities detained the team in Georgetown as reports of mass deaths emerged. This twist of fate, being away for a ball game, meant Stephan survived the massacre. But survival came with immense pain. Stephan was absolutely devastated. He lost his mother, Marceline was poisoned, his father, Jim Jones, shot himself, his younger brother Lou and little brother Kimo, his sister Agnes and her kids, and countless friends he had grown up with. Imagine being 19 and almost your entire family and community are suddenly gone by your father's hand. In the aftermath, Stephan grappled with overwhelming survivor's guilt. He later admitted he often asked himself for the forgiveness of those who died, wondering if they felt abandoned by him. For years, he struggled with anger and trauma, but Stephan also chose to move forward with his life. He refused to be defined entirely by the sins of his father. Stephan quietly built a new life. He married, had 3 daughters, and worked an ordinary job, far away from the spotlight of his father's infamy. Eventually, he even found the strength to speak publicly in documentaries and interviews, openly reflecting on his father and the tragedy, hoping to prevent anything like Jonestown from happening again. Today, Stephan Jones is in his mid-60s and still carries the weight of Jonestown. But he has managed to find love, raise a family, and create an identity beyond just Jim Jones's son. His story is one of pain, yes, but also of resilience.
Stephan, I want to give you your P's for standing on your ground and being strong and actually coming out with the truth to help you get through this. You understand where I'm going with this, y'all? Boom, boom, boom. The truth set Stephan free, right? Tim, you think all these channels are trying to hate on you and stuff like that? No. No, tell the truth, man. Because you struggling with something, bro, allegedly. You feel me? Now, this is one of Jim Jones' only sons that are still alive, y'all. Why? Allegedly, why? Because he didn't let his daddy or what his daddy did control him or overtake his life. He started speaking the truth on his own father to get this off of him. That ain't nothing but God. Ain't nothing but God. That's it, that's all. Because I look at it like this. With everything that went on, and he was saved by a basketball game because his dad chose to shoot the congressman that day. You know what that means? That tells me, allegedly, just Charlie B's opinion and point. He would have died too that day if there was no game.
Number 5, Lou Eric Jones, was one of the Korean War orphans adopted by Jim and Marceline. Born in South Korea in 1956, little Lou was about 2 years old when the Joneses welcomed him into their family. They gave him an American name, and he grew up as a beloved son in the Jones Rainbow family. Lou was known as a sweet, quiet boy in his youth. As he grew, he stayed deeply involved in temple life. He was a living symbol of his parents' ideals of racial unity. Unlike some siblings who questioned Jim Jones, Lou remained loyal to his father and the cause. By the time the temple moved to Jonestown, Lou was in his early 20s. In the jungle community, he even started a family of his own. Lou had a partner in Jonestown, Terry, and together they had a baby boy named Cheoki in 1977. Becoming a father made Lou happy. There are photos of him proudly holding his infant son, smiling. But that happiness would not last. On the final day of Jonestown, 21-year-old Lou and his 1-year-old son, Cheoki, both lost their lives. When the poison was distributed, parents were told to dose their children first. It's painful to imagine, but Lou's little boy was likely given cyanide-laced flavor aid by the very people who loved him. Lou himself then drank the poison. Father and son died together, among the hundreds of victims. Lou's death showed just how all-consuming Jim Jones's control had become. Jim had raised Lou from a toddler and ultimately convinced him that revolutionary suicide was somehow a justified, even noble act. Lou didn't run or resist. He followed his father's directive to the very end, at the cost of his entire young family. Out of Jim Jones's children, Lou was one who stayed utterly devoted, and it cost him everything. Today, the memory of Lou is bittersweet for surviving family members. He's remembered as a kind young man who should have had a long life ahead of him. Instead, his name, along with baby Cheoki's, is listed among the 918 lost in Jonestown.
Okay, now allegedly that's a form of brainwashing. He stood strong with Jim, right? Stood strong with his father, right? Why? Allegedly because that's all he knew and he didn't have nobody else in his ear like your dad's tricking. Why does Tim keep everybody on that farm and nobody else to talk to but Tim? Are y'all getting the gist of how this looks the same? Whole show alleged. Fixed it.
Number 4, Stephan Jones. Not all of Jim Jones's children lived to see Jonestown. One was lost far earlier. Stephan Jones was another Korean child the Jones family adopted, and she was the youngest daughter. Her Korean name was Yoon Soon, and she was around 4 years old when Jim and Marceline brought her into their home in late 1958. Stephanie was a bright, playful little girl, and the Joneses cherished her. But fate dealt a cruel hand. In May 1959, just a few months after her adoption, tragedy struck. Stephanie was riding in a car with several People's Temple members returning from a church event in Indiana when they were involved in a horrific car accident. The crash killed 6 people, and little Stephanie, only 5 years old, was one of them. The Jones family was devastated. This was their first personal brush with tragedy. Marceline had hoped to save this child from a war-torn homeland and give her a beautiful future, only to lose her in a random accident. Jim Jones preached at Stephanie's memorial, no doubt struggling to make sense of such a loss. Stephanie's death happened long before the world had heard of Jonestown, but it is a poignant chapter in the Jones family saga. In a way, Stephanie was the first casualty connected to Jim Jones's dream, albeit by accident, not by any cult activity. Because she died in 1959, Stephanie never experienced the later chaos of the Temple's move to California and then Guyana. She remains a sweet, innocent memory from the time when People's Temple was still just a small Indiana church. Her story often gets overshadowed by the enormity of Jonestown, but it shouldn't be forgotten that Jim and Marceline lost a daughter nearly 2 decades before the massacre. Stephanie's brief life reminds us that even in a story filled with intentional evil, there were also moments of simple human tragedy.
Okay, I'm gonna take this one. I hope y'all agree with me. Peanut Game, I'm not putting it on y'all. But Charlie B feels like, hopefully, the crash was quick. She didn't feel anything, and she went home, right? And she didn't have to, I hope you understand when I say this, she didn't have to choke to death drinking that mess. I hope y'all don't be like, oh, Charlie B, that's cold. I don't know how else to put it. I'm glad that that child didn't have to endure all that happened at Jonestown, and she went on with hopefully no pain. Hopefully it was instant. That's what Charlie B is trying to say. I don't want any child to pass away, but I really don't want any child foaming at the mouth, falling over, and trying to struggle for their life when it could be quick and you at home. I hope you understand what I'm saying right there. Whole show alleged. Oh, man.
Number 3, Timothy Tim Glenn Tupper Jones. Born in 1959, who came into the temple through his biological parents, who were loyal members of Jim Jones's church. Jim and Marceline ended up adopting Tim when he was a child, making him one of their sons. Tim was about the same age as Stephan, and the 2 boys grew up like brothers. Tim was known for being athletic and outgoing. In fact, he was a standout baseball pitcher in high school before the temple uprooted the kids to move to Guyana. In Jonestown, teenage Tim found the harsh conditions tough, so he focused on something he loved, basketball. Along with Stephan and others, Tim played on the Jonestown basketball team, and this routine ultimately saved his life. On the day of the massacre, 19-year-old Tim was in Georgetown with the team for a tournament. Had he been in Jonestown, he likely would have died with the rest. Instead, Tim survived the immediate events of November 18th, 1978. But survival did not mean he was unhurt. In a single day, Tim lost everything. His adoptive parents, Jim and Marceline, and many friends were dead. Even more crushing, Tim's young wife and their baby daughter were in Jonestown, and both were killed by the poison. Yes, Tim had started a family as a teenager in Jonestown, only to have them taken away. He also later learned that some of his extended biological family, who had joined the temple, died as well. It's hard to overstate the shock and grief he went through. After returning to the United States, Tim struggled to adjust to a normal life. He was haunted by guilt and trauma, often wondering if he could have done something to stop the tragedy if he had been there, or why he was allowed to live when so many others didn't. For a long time, Tim kept a low profile and battled depression and anger. What eventually pulled him through was building a new family. He remarried and had 4 children, and he found that being a father again gave him purpose and a kind of healing. His children became his anchor to the world and proof that love could endure beyond the cult. In time, Tim made a degree of peace with his past, though he never forgot it. He occasionally joined his brother Stephan in speaking with researchers or participating in survivor reunions, but mostly he lived quietly. In 2019, at age 59, Timothy Tupper Jones passed away from a heart attack. Those who knew him mourned the gentle, resilient man he had become. Tim's life was scarred by Jonestown, but it was also marked by quiet strength and the ability to find hope after unimaginable loss.
Okay, Peanut Gang, jump back to what I said before. Stress will take you out of here. I don't think I could deal with that. Could you? I'm asking y'all a question. This is all on y'all. Could y'all deal with thinking about every day how you've lost everybody? Everybody. How much stress is that? That man passed away young. That's young. He wasn't even 60. That's young to me. What? 12 years from now? Man. Y'all see Charlie B? That's young to me. I'm a big kid. You only as old as you feel, baby. Let's get it. Let's go. Don't let nobody stress you out, y'all.
Number 2. John Victor. John Moss Jones. Born in 1972, Little John's parentage was entangled in temple drama. His mother was Grace Stowen, a prominent temple member, and Grace's husband was a lawyer named Tim Stowen. However, Jim Jones claimed that he, not Tim, was John's biological father. According to Jim, Grace had a secret affair with him, and John was the result. Many who knew the situation believed this was a lie Jim concocted to maintain power over the Stowens, but Jim insisted the boy was his. He even informally renamed the child John Moss Jones and treated him as a son. For the first few years of John's life, Grace and Tim Stowen were part of the temple, and Jim's claim on the boy was an internal issue. But in 1976, Grace defected from the People's Temple, leaving her little boy behind in the care of temple members. Jones wouldn't let her take him. Thus began a bitter and public custody battle. Grace desperately wanted her son back. Jim Jones was equally determined not to lose his child. The battle over John became one of the driving obsessions of Jim Jones's final years. It fueled his paranoia and anger at the outside world. In 1977, as legal pressure mounted, Jones whisked 5-year-old John Victor off to Jonestown in Guyana, effectively putting him out of the reach of U.S. courts. Grace continued to fight in court, and at one point actually won a custody order in California. But it was unenforceable in Guyana. The case was still unresolved in Guyanese courts by November 1978. Tragically, Little John became a victim of this power struggle. In Jonestown, John Victor was just another kid in the community, probably unaware of the tug-of-war over him. On November 18, 1978, when the poison ritual began, John was 6 years old. He was one of nearly 300 children in Jonestown who were killed that day. The method was ghastly. Aides used syringes to squirt cyanide-laced liquid into the mouths of the youngest children or anyone who resisted. It's almost certain that John had this poison put into him without fully understanding what was happening. He died there among all the other children. News of John's death was devastating to Grace Stowen. She had fought so hard to save her son, only to have him perish in the massacre. Jim Jones had once ominously said he'd rather see the boy dead than back with his mother. And in the end, that's exactly what happened. John Victor Stowen's short life and tragic end highlight the utter insanity of Jonestown. A little boy became a pawn in a deadly ideological game. To this day, John's story is remembered as one of the most heartbreaking aspects of the Jonestown saga, a reminder that innocent children often suffer the most for the misguided actions of adults.
Now, before we go any further, no, I do not think, I hope, but I do not think Tim is going to delete his children. This is the point I'm trying to make here. It seems like no matter what goes on that farm, he's under full control, right? If those children are misled by their parents, like he just said, with their thoughts and their beliefs, where does that leave the children if they don't think and believe like that? Or if they have to? You feel what I'm saying? Are y'all getting what I'm saying? Because it's like, I'm sitting here and I'm thinking to myself, why would you, as an adult, how can anybody talk you into poisoning children? Right? So if that's possible, and you're just like BTN members, rolling around listening to this man and feel strong about what he says, if that's possible, How far gone is Megan right now? And he's the only one that she talks to. And he's the only one that gives her the word from God. Does that make any sense now that y'all seen this? No, it doesn't. I'm not saying it's going to end up like that. But what I'm saying is, it's not going to probably end up good. Because as soon as Jim Jones knew he shot that congressman, he knew it was over. So he tried to take everybody with him. Right? What's going to happen, allegedly, if Tim loses YouTube and he's broke? We don't know. We just hope that he'll go get a job and Megan go get a job and they do their thing and not spiral out of control. So I don't want nobody to come on here and be like, oh, Charlie B, you stretching, trying to say he gonna hurt his kids and do all that. I'm just saying, there's a lot of similarities to what Jim did. Change the one letter to what Tim did. Does. Right? It's the same thing except for the Kool-Aid. Yes or no? Yes or no? I'm going to tell them what they want to know. They're going to hear what I think, and it's going to be my word and nobody else's. And if anybody else don't agree, like, honestly, look at it like this. Bim, bim, bim. Does he have a little Guyana out there with his family? Whole show alleged. Think about it. Think about it. How many, just because he had 900 and something people out there, and Tim only has what? 5 people out there? Is there any difference in what's going down as far as the teachings that he's putting on them? Whole show alleged. Think about what's going on, y'all. Think about he's secluding them just like this brother did. He's teaching his boys. He's having Megan teach his boys nothing, allegedly, to get through life. So where are they going to be? Right there on that farm with Tim and Megan, breaking themselves down while they in the house. Whole show alleged.
Number 1. Jim Jones Kimo Prokes. He was the baby of the family in every sense, the youngest child, and the secret son born from Jim's relationship with his top aide, Carolyn Layton. Kimo was born in 1975 in California, just as the People's Temple was preparing to relocate to Guyana. His name, Jim John, was a combination of Jim and John, echoing his father's, but to avoid confusion, and perhaps to soften the circumstances of his birth. Everyone called him Kimo. To dodge scandal, since Jim was still married to Marceline, the baby's legal last name was given as Prokes, after Temple member Michael Prokes, hiding the fact that Jim Jones was the father. But within the group, it was understood who Kimo's father was. Little Kimo spent his entire short life inside the world of People's Temple. As an infant, he was doted on by his mother Carolyn, and by Jim whenever Jim had the time. Despite the awkward family situation, Marceline Jones even helped care for Kimo at times, treating him kindly. In 1977, 1-year-old Kimo moved to Jonestown with Carolyn and the rest of the inner circle. He was a carefree toddler in the jungle, adored by the community family. He had no way of knowing the tension and danger that was building around him. On the final day of Jonestown, Kimo was only 3 years old. When his father decreed that everyone should die peacefully, Carolyn Layton stayed utterly loyal. In a heartbreaking and horrific act, she administered poison to her own child. She likely believed, in her warped, brainwashed state, that she was sparing Kimo from a worse fate at the hands of imaginary enemies. The poison killed the toddler in minutes. Carolyn herself took poison shortly after. Baby Kimo died in his mother's arms, an innocent life snuffed out by the very people who should have protected it. He was one of the youngest victims of the massacre. Kimo's death is one of the most haunting images of Jonestown. The idea that a father's madness led to a mother poisoning her baby. Had he lived, Jim John Kimo Jones would be around 50 years old today. He never got that chance. Instead, he will forever remain a symbol of lost innocence, a child who had no say in the destiny chosen for him.
And no, I'm not saying Megan would do that either, but what I am saying is this. Where did she get all her word from God from? So Tim told her to do this because God said it. Would she do it? We'll never know. Whole show alleged. Charlie V out. I hope y'all enjoyed this one. Everybody be coming my emails like, Charlie B, you be on one in the morning. I said no jokey joke, my bad. I don't know what it is. When I wake up, I'm just like, what's wrong? See y'all later. Tim dropping. Let's go, man. Love y'all. Y'all be easy. I'm out.